Good evening to everyone here in the audience and those who are watching online. Thank you for attending this evening's base town hall hosted by the Commanding General, Brigadier General Adolfo Garcia Jr. I'm the Director of Communications Strategy and Operations, Nat Fay, and I'll be serving as your MC tonight. So just a few housekeeping items before I turn the mic over to General Garcia. Please understand, again, this is a live stream event. We have a lot of folks watching online, so it's important that if you do have a question or you do have an answer for those who are asking the question, that you speak loudly, you use the microphones that we have provided, and we'll also try to answer some of those questions we've received via direct messages over the past week or those that we get during the live stream. We also ask that you please be respectful of everyone here and keep your questions as specific to an issue as possible. If you're dissatisfied about a particular service, we have the ICE system that is designed to enable you to address your concerns in detail. And if you have a specific issue in your residence that needs fixing, we have members from the Housing Office, AMCC, and Liberty Housing here that can speak with you after the town hall as well. The topics we'd like to focus on tonight are about base living, not Marine Corps policy or operational commitments abroad. This session is expected to last about 90 minutes, and when we reach the 7:15 p.m. mark, I'll let everybody know that it's time to start wrapping things up. Now, as a footnote, if we don't, or if you feel like we haven't effectively answered your question, or we don't get to you in the time allotted, please seek out one of our Marines here in the theater or email us at our organizational inbox, which will be displayed up here at the end, which can be found and could also be found on the resource table and the handouts that are there. Our goal is to answer each and every question, and if we don't answer it to your satisfaction, there are multiple ways we can continue that conversation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to General Garcia.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Thank you all for coming, and I know that we have a lot of folks listening on the live stream. I want to say thank you for participating with us, and I know you guys have busy nights, and there's also a conflict with the Lejeune High School, so those are here. I appreciate it very much. One of the Commandant's priorities is to prepare the Marine Corps for the next fight, and also balance quality of life for the Marines, the sailors, and the family members on our bases and in all our installations. And so, this town hall, the last one we did was in 2018, believe it or not. And so we haven't done a town hall in a while, and that's why we want to be able to hear from you. We want to be able to receive your questions, answer them to the best of our ability, and then also listen to any of your concerns. And the important thing is that feedback. This is your opportunity to provide that feedback to us. I'm very proud of what we have here at Camp Lejeune and the services that we provide and the quality of life that we try to provide. But I know that we're not perfect. So if you have feedback, if you have questions, if you have concerns, please voice them, and we'll do our best to answer them. When I got in charge, I was a young officer. I used to say that, hey, when I get in charge, I'm going to change this or I'm going to change that. What I didn't know is sometimes you have limited resources to be able to do that. Or sometimes, we're spending taxpayer money. So there's federal code, there is fiscal law, and there's things that move very slowly. And that's a challenge sometimes because that can be, if you're not really patient, some of the things that we're doing won't actually come to fruition 5 years from now. And that's just the way that sometimes military construction or minor construction works. And so I ask that you bear with us. We are laying the road for something that we'll be able to drive on 5 years from now. Just know that that takes time. As we talk about limited resources, most of our money goes to keeping the lights on this base, being able to provide protection for the base, being able to provide those essential services for us. But there is some discretionary money, and I would call that the CG's reserve, and we will utilize that money for those quick wins, or maybe something that we didn't anticipate. And so we've already used it. For example, we had a playground over there in Seth Williams, and the request was for a fence around there. And so we went ahead and placed a fence to be able to allow, you know, certain kids to be able to play there. So we did that, and it's a quick win, and we used some of our discretionary funds for that. So there are ways that we can do that, and we can listen to your concerns, your questions, and also provide some feedback. I will tell you that we have a panel here of experts with decades of experience. And I thought that that's probably the best way to do the town hall. Instead of just me coming up here and trying to answer your questions to the best of my ability, and then maybe taking some questions for the record, I thought we would assemble a panel of experts so we can give that immediate feedback, answer those questions, and then maybe kind of explain on why we can't do certain things, or maybe kind of just take down your information and follow up with you if we can't answer the question. We're all invested in ensuring the best quality of life possible, and that's something that we can afford. And I would say that I'm personally invested. I was born on a military base. Most of my life was living on military bases. I have 4 kids. Their most greatest memories and their formative years were on a military base. I have a son who is a young Marine, and another son who is trying to become a young Marine. So I am, invested. And when we say we're going to listen to you, we care about your concerns, and that comes from the heart. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panel here. Sergeant Major Ryan Necco is my confidant and right-hand man. He deals a lot with troop and family welfare. He's also a great conduit from the lieutenant sergeants majors to be able to voice their concerns and work any issues. We have Captain Kevin Brown. Kevin Brown is the Naval Medical Center Camp Lejeune CO, also known as the hospital CO. So if you have any questions on medical or pharmacy-related issues, he's the one to ask. We have Lieutenant Colonel Ed Pinales. He is our Provost Marshal, and he is primarily responsible for the security of the base and also for firearms registrations and many other things. We have Miss Julie Fulton. She's our school liaison. The school liaison she is our primary liaison to the DODEA schools and also to our schools out in the community. So if you have any questions about schools, please ask them to Julie Fulton. We have Commander Bob Surrey. He's here representing our facilities. We have Captain Jim Brown. Jim, where you at? Captain Jim Brown is our director for facilities, but Bob is our public works officer, and he touches everything, all our buildings, every road, every water, every volt of electricity. He and his team of civil engineers are the ones that are doing that. We have Mike Scalise. Mike Scalise is our G7. He's also our community relations and government liaison. And so he works with our, great community partners that we have outside the base, and also liaises with them and provides, when they come on base and they want to see the base and want to hear about some of the issues or some of the successes that we have, Mike Scalise is the one doing that. Over here we have our Director for Marine Corps Community Services, Ms. Sarah Wilchin, and Sarah's portfolio is not only the retail side, but also the Marine and Family Program side. For example, the gyms, the CDCs, and also any counseling services. We have Mr. Chris Perkins. He is our Director of our Distribution Management office. So if you have like household goods, or something like that, in the movements, he can do that. He's also representing the G4, who is here. And, any questions on that you have on safety or any questions on crosswalks, these gentlemen could answer that. Okay, now we're going to our housing, and I'm almost done here, so bear with me. We have our family housing director, or military housing director, Miss Mary Simmerman, and she's kind of your liaison and advocate for military housing. And then we have our 2 partners, our military housing partners. We have Mr. John Giltz from AMCC, and also Miss Dawn Call from Lincoln Military Housing. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nat to get us started with the questions and answers.
Thank you, General. For the audience, again, if you are interested in asking a question, you can queue up over here. There's one mic on a stand over here, and you can have a seat over there, make yourselves comfortable, and just kind of line up there. And we'll make you all, the ones who took the time to come out here, you all will be the priority. So anytime I see somebody over there, I'm going to call on you first. And if I don't have any questions from the audience, then we'll get to the ones that have been direct messages from Facebook. And I also have my trusty lieutenant, who is also queuing some questions here. Probably one of the first questions that we have gotten most recently is about the reduced hours at the TOP gate. So we figured we'd throw a softball question to our panelists about the TOP gate. And there is some frustration because there are a number of people who use that, especially coming from Hubert and wanting to go to Onslow Beach, or they regularly commute, or they're trying to get all the way down to Wilmington using Highway 172. We understand we've registered all those questions. So does somebody on the panel want to take a stab initially?
I'll go ahead and take a stab at that first, and then Lieutenant Colonel Penales can back me up if I miss something. So one of our unresolved issues when I took over command of this base, it was the TOP gate. That's what the Triangle Outpost Gate is, what it's commonly known. And so the TOP gate is about 3 months into it. I had a commander come to me and say he had concerns with the TOP gate, with the safety of the Marines that were serving as sentries there, and also with the force protection requirements there. So that is kind of my top two priorities, is ensuring the safety of those Marines that are operating the gate, and then also ensuring the force protection of everybody that works on this base and lives on this base. So those are the two top priorities. I know that it is causing an inconvenience for some of you once we do implement those reduced hours. And I understand there are second, third order effects on that. So this is what I held a planning team all together, a planning team. They took a look at traffic studies from previous years, and then they also did a traffic study. So it's 2% of the entire Camp Lejeune traffic goes through the TOP gate. And then 50% of our unauthorized entries, essentially our gate runners is what we call them, is out of the TOP gate. And most of our accidents that happen at a gate are at the TOP gate because it's just not really wide enough. And so that puts at risk not only the Marines, the sentries, because the Marine has to go on the other side, because the Marine stands on the passenger side and has to go to the driver's side to be able to check the ID card. And then also, it has just become really dangerous. So what we did is we put together a planning team. They came to us, and one of the recommendations was close it all together. The other recommendations is reduce the operating hours to those peak times. And so before I went ahead and made a decision on that, I went to our largest tenant, briefed them on our analysis and the rationale for reducing those hours, and then also some of our local officials, we talked to them and briefed them on our rationale, and also showed videos of gate runners, what we had there. And so after that, so we're going to do a 90-day assessment. So for 90 days, we're going to reduce the operating hours. We'll make an assessment after those 90 days. But let me tell you this, my goal is to open that gate 24/7. And the reason why is because we have a military construction project that we have submitted. We have not received funding for, but we have submitted that military construction project. That military construction project would provide that protection to those Marines, and it will also provide force protection for the base, and that's what we're doing. That's one of our top priorities. We've submitted it for multiple years, and we'll continue to submit it, and so the overall goal is to open it back up once we are able to provide those protections to those Marines.
Lieutenant Colonel Penales, do you have anything else you want to add? I feel like we covered most of it, but.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. So the only thing that I'd like to touch on, and you mentioned the traffic studies, just for perspective, we've conducted traffic studies from PMO in 2019, traffic studies in 2022 and traffic studies last year. When the CG mentioned that only 2% of the overall Lejeune traffic goes through the TOP gate, and that's based on the assessment and the traffic studies that we received. But what I will tell you is when we looked at the, during our OPTs and our planning conference, we recognized that some of the communities members will be impacted by this decision. So we really took a look at that, and we took a look at the numbers throughout the entire 24-hour cycle during those traffic studies. And what the traffic studies show is of that 2% that comes through the TOP gate for the overall traffic, about 90% of the traffic that transits to the TOP gate comes to that gate during the times that the gate will be open, in the peak hours in the morning and peak hours in the afternoon. That was a very deliberate decision when we recommended these times to the CG, because we were looking at the impact and making sure that we recognize our community partners and our other members of the community. The other thing that we did as well is we talked to our counterparts from local law enforcement, emergency services, and others in the community to make sure that this decision was made collaborating with everybody that will be impacted by this decision. So that's, again, part of the ask and the task that the planning team received from the Commander General, and then some of the recommendations that we made. And that's it, sir.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Pinellas. We have gotten a number of concerns about the reduced hours at TOP Gate. We'll take all of those comments, we'll roll them all up, and we'll make sure that if there is an aspect that was not answered about the TOP Gate, that we get an answer back to you. October 23rd of last year, we had a spouses roundtable. And during that time, this was hosted by the CMC's wife and a number of other spouses, and there were a number of concerns that were brought up, and a lot of the questions that we couldn't get to came up, and this is kind of us making good on the promise to address some of those that we had at the spouses roundtable. So, for the record, there were some concerns regarding a lack of adequate adaptive parks on base and at schools, and a desire for handicapped access to Onslow Beach. So there was some folks wondering what has been done to accommodate special needs kids, especially in the housing areas at Onslow Beach. John, you want to take the first shot at that for the housing?
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening. So first off, the family that asked that, on behalf of all the other families that probably have the same question, thank you. I mean, these are some of our most challenged and difficult and hard fighting working families every day, and so to be able to find out where these facilities exist is a great question, and I hope it helps the community. So I can only speak for AMCC. We've got 117 playgrounds. That's a lot, and that's all over AMCC, which is everywhere. But we do have one special playground that was built a few years ago that is an all-inclusive playground, and it's right next to the Bicentennial Community Center, which is right off Stone Street, just a baseball's throw from that new bridge on the overpass. And as an example of how we definitely try to bend over backwards and work with these families, last fall we had a young spouse contact us about a child with cystic fibrosis, and could we put a swing in so that her child could swing? And I think within a couple weeks we had one in that playground. We took a bay out and put one in there. So it's the best we have right now. We do have future plans to move towards more all-inclusive playgrounds. Frankly, they're a couple $100,000 a piece. That's hard for us right now, but we do love those families, and when they reach out to us, we do everything we can to take care of them. Now, as far as where the amenities are, we're updating our map online. That should be done by the end of March, so you can click and see where all of our amenities are, and we're going to have links to MCCS, and when or if DODEA allows access to playgrounds that might be better for kids in general as well, we'll link that in there as well. But certainly understand where that question's coming from. We do everything we can for those families, and thank you.
You want to talk about Onslow Beach there, Sarah? Or?
Yeah, thank you for the question as well. So appreciate the desire to enjoy the beach for everyone. We were looking into some of the recommendations and suggestions about rollout type of ramp access, and a lot of folks have experienced different beaches, and all beaches do differ, and the challenge that we're finding right now in looking at some of those options are the massive tide changes that we have. So we can go from having a few feet of beach to nothing. So that's one thing we're just trying to work through, but we are looking at the recommendations and suggestions. We also have a bank of wheelchairs that are beach accessible, and we keep those there at the beach, and they're free to anyone who wants to use them. And so we're also looking at other options in accessible wheelchairs. There are some that are cost prohibitive and some that might be, better options than the ones that we have. But we do appreciate the question, and we're going to continue to do some research there. And I know Julie has a little bit of information. Where's Julie? On the Dodia School playgrounds.
Right. I spoke with the superintendent this week, and the Dodia School playgrounds that are accessible, the ones that are not on the interior of the schools, are free for residents to use on the weekends and after school hours. Some of those have more adaptive equipment than others, and the equipment that is placed at those schools depends on the students and the IEPs and what is required for those particular students. So anybody who has a specific question about that, I can get you in contact with Brandy Elbinger, who is the instructional support specialist for special education for the Dodia schools.
Okay, thank you. The next question comes from one of our direct messages. So excuse me if I have to read this. Can we have something done about the potholes on Bougainville Drive between Wilson Boulevard and Camp Johnson Gate? There are complaints about them being only temporarily filled with gravel and then they're eventually washing out. Does anyone have an update on potholes there?
As a public works officer, I'm the person to update you on potholes. We're aware of the challenges in that area. That road wasn't built for the type of traffic that it sees now. We've done temporary repairs there over time. So we'll take a closer look and provide feedback via NAT on additional actions that we can take to make that even higher quality. But it is an enduring problem, that area, so we're aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander Saray. All right, this one applies to housing again. It says, please address the situation regarding military base housing units, particularly field-grade houses in Paradise Point being rented to retirees, civil service members, and base employees not active duty. John, you want to take that?
All right. Well, again, thank you for the question. I want to start off, before I answer it, by thanking those Waterfall residents, as we refer to them, for living with us. We would be bankrupt without them. And I don't want to speak for the leadership sitting up here in the front row, or General Garcia, or the commanders before him, or the Commandant, or anybody else, but I don't think the Marine Corps wants to get back into the housing business. So first off, to those families, thank you. Because you take a bit of a risk signing a 12-month lease, knowing at the end of it you go month to month, and at any time you could be asked to leave. And they have been asked to leave after Florence. So that's my first point. We need them. They're good neighbors. They go through the vetting process. Many of them are retirees. Many of them are employees on the base. But to the question, look, I get it. We just recently started to move into that Paradise Point area with Waterfall. And it's a direct result of the losses that we had seen based on empty houses for an extended period, and the fact that we do have Waterfall or civilian residents who do qualify and in many cases are willing to pay more than some of you are to live in that house. So that's point number one. Point number two, and some of you, if you live there, you may have seen just a couple hours ago, what we're really trying to figure out is what the real problem is. And there was reference in the question, either read or I saw earlier, to the fact that, quote unquote, there are families being told there's no house for them, and then there's a direct correlation made to Waterfall residents. What's really occurring as a retired officer myself, is that right now and starting last month and over the next few weeks, officers are getting their orders. And they're calling. And they're asking, am I going to have a house? And I can only tell you what I know. And there are still empty homes in that neighborhood right now. And there were 5 or 6 that were empty from last July until this fall. That's a lot of BAH not being able to get put back into the project, because that's where it goes. And so what we're trying to do now to answer the question, and really the root of the question, I believe, is we sent out today a request, because your lease says you have to give us 30 days notice. A request to let us know sooner. It doesn't replace your 30-day notice, but let us know sooner so that we can plan, we can work with the military housing office on, they do all the 06 assignments, and we can work the rest so that we can tell those coming after you, I can't give you an address yet, but you're very likely going to get a house because you're 32 on the list, and we now know there's 35 moving out. And in the absence of this new initiative, we may have only known about 10. So the cycle of officer orders, when they move, when they make their leasing decisions out in town, is the root of the problem, and not the fact that you've got some new good neighbors in your area that are helping all of us contribute to the problem set, which is as much revenue as we can bring in so I can put it back in your houses. Now, I will say, because I see the chief of staff, I dorked this one up a little bit. He and I had good communications on the first couple. That broke down on a couple after that. And I talked to him yesterday and recommitted to telling him more in advance about what we're doing and why we're doing it, to be able to make the case in the neighborhood about why this is okay, and how a lot of logic and thought went into it. And so for that, Chief, I apologize again. We'll do better. Thank you.
Okay.
I asked Nat to, if we can kind of rotate, instead of just getting all the questions that were sent online, if we can ask if there's any questions over here inside the theater, and then also, you know, anybody that's live streaming, we'll see if they have any questions, so we can kind of rotate a little bit. Nat, go ahead.
Oh, we do. We have plenty that are coming in. A few more about the TOP gate. One interested party was hoping to see. Oh, I apologize. Go ahead, sir.
Hold on 1 second. I'm not quite that tall. There we go. All right. Thank you very much. My name is Master Gunnery Sergeant McLaughlin, and I do have a question about the Triangle Gate on a few different things. You said about the reduced hours to be able to go ahead and allow the traffic to still flow through there. Since that gate is one of the oldest gates out there that has not had any renovation to it, even though you did say that you're looking at doing renovations, is there any quick fixes that can be put in place for turning lanes to help the school buses that are stuck in that traffic in the morning, along with the locals that are trying to get to work, since on a regular basis there is anywhere from a 10 minutes to 30-minute wait out there every single morning during those peak performance hours. Also, the other portion I'd like to go ahead and ask is, you originally mentioned the closure of the gate due to the security and just the threat con to the personnel that are out there, and that you were going to do a 90-day assessment. During that 90 days, if you determine that the traffic is too overwhelming to reroute everyone to our already overpopulated and over-trafficked area out on 24 and Piney Green during that time, and it shows that it had value to keep that gate open, how are you going to go ahead and provide that security that you were worried about back to those Marines for what you originally shut it down for?
Thank you, sir, for the question. I'll take the first portion of your question. If I understand correctly, you wanted to talk about the traffic on Highway 24 in the morning due to the additional traffic going through the TOP gate. Is that correct?
Yes, General. So it's the traffic that comes off of 172 and Bear Creek, because there's those two lanes that merge together, and it's a single lane that comes in there. And there's also very often when you go through that gate, the guard does not scan your ID, which could be throwing off the data that you might have collected to determine the 2% usage. Because I can tell you from a frequent user of that gate, it is extremely busy throughout the mornings.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. I think I misunderstood initially, but let me say first, during our planning process, we did talk to our counterparts in the city, in the state, and at least along Highway 24, we will be working with them to ensure that the timing and the sequencing of the traffic lights is adjusted so that we can better assess and move traffic along the way on Highway 24 towards Piney Green and Holcomb, et cetera, in the morning hours. With regards to your question about the scanning of the ID cards with divots in the morning, just like to tell you that the way that we do the traffic studies does not rely on divots. We rely on other devices or traffic counters for that particular traffic study, sir.
And what would be the adjustments made if you do determine to open that gate back up to provide protections to the Marine that stands that post?
About the project that we have, the Milcon project. We're phoning a friend from the stands.
So I think what we're referring to is the military construction project that would build what we call a UFC, a Unified Facilities Criteria requirement for the gate, would set the gate much further inbound so you'd have a lot of reaction time for the guards and those kinds of things. That's roughly a $10 or $15 million project. So it's on our Milcon list. It's a priority for that. Your question in the immediate future is, it's confined to that space, and so far we've made a conscious decision not to piecemeal it because we have to completely relocate the gate, and everything is in even the small versions of that are $4 or $5 million to make enough real estate there to do, I think, what you're asking. But I think that goes into the larger question of, can we continue to operate it the way we are? But
And what we've also done is we've increased the lighting there, especially at night. We didn't have that there, so we increased the lighting. It's a lot brighter there, and we also put rumble strips. I don't know if you're tracking that. We put rumble strips on there to just bring attention to those vehicles that are just coming down that road at a high rate of speed to alert them that there is a gate sentry there. So we did that. But we still have gate runners, even though we've done all those things. So we didn't just take a look at this and said, okay, well, let's just shut it down. We took a look at how do we mitigate the risk to those Marines over there, and we did those small things to try to mitigate the risk. And now the only way that we can mitigate the risk right now is to primarily do it during daylight hours and during peak hours. But we're still going to do the assessment, and we'll give it an honest effort and take a look at it, and we may have to make adjustments based off of that 90-day assessment.
Okay, we have another TOP-related one coming from online. Yesterday at TOP at 8 a.m., there were still lines from both directions. Will people in line be turned around at 8 a.m. when it presumably closed, or will the traffic continue through? This interested party said, I was in line for 45 minutes. So, Lieutenant Colonel Pinales, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So as part of the process for implementing this decision on 12 March, we have a few more weeks till we get there. My operations team at PMO is right now working on making sure we have specific procedures for the TOP gate that are refined for the new environment that we are about to get into on 12 March. One of the things we talked about is specifically this particular scenario when something like that happens and we have a queue at 0800 in the morning. What do? Do we close the gate immediately, or do we allow everybody to come through and get to work at that in the morning? We don't have a complete product yet. We're looking through that, but I can tell you that the decision will be to allow everybody to come in. And then once the queue is clear, we close the gate. And that will be my direction to the staff.
Gentlemen, at the mic.
Good evening, Lieutenant Vandy Slant. I work at Courthouse Bay, and I know on Main side it might not seem like that big of a deal for closing the back, 172 gate, but there's a lot of traffic from the 4 or 5 commands in Courthouse and along the southern edge of the base. that use that gate, especially if you're going over to Cherry Point. It saves you probably 20 minutes trying to get over to meetings there, and I have to do that a couple times a month. And usually it's midday. I always see cars at that gate, even, unless it's at night, which I could see justification for closing the gate at night after the busy hours, because that just makes sense, the darkness and whatever. But during the daytime, especially arguments, I read, probably 200 comments were made about closing the gate online when it was posted a couple days ago on the Facebook page, and most of them were negative. So there's a lot of people it's impacting. And especially people saying, well, what about, Saturday, people want to get to the beach, and they come from Swansboro, they use that gate to get to the beach. So, could there be some hours, like on Saturday or something like that? I think there's a lot more questions, and just doing a study of who is getting through the gate isn't going to analyze who's not, and how many people is it disadvantaging, by making the decision that we made. So.
I think there was a question in there. Could you just...
I guess I'm concerned, could you open the gate just during the daytime and close it at night? I guess that's the main question I have.
Okay, thank you for your question. And I think we're going to do a 90-day assessment. We'll take a look at it, and if we need to make any adjustments based off of the traffic that is going through there, we will look to make some adjustments. And so, I mean, I don't know what else to say about that, but we will definitely take a look at it, and we'll make an assessment.
Because it's been termed the 172 gate, I think there has been some confusion about the Sneeds Ferry gate getting severely reduced hours like the TOP gate. Big opportunity to clear up any misinformation. I believe the Sneeds Ferry gate is still going to stay open 24/7. Correct? Am I correct on that?
Yes, that is correct. There will be no changes to the operating hours at the TOP gate. The Sneeds Ferry gate. The Sneeds Ferry gate will continue to be open 24/7.
There's also a question about expanding the hours at the Piney Green gate to accommodate the reduced hours at the TOP gate. Any measure afoot to do that?
That piece, in conjunction with the work that we did for the TOP gate and the analysis there, the traffic studies, we're also conducting, as we speak, a traffic study at the Piney Green gate, and that will continue once we open once we implement the decision for the TOP gate. So we want to see what happens, how it looks now before it is implemented, and then how it looks after it is implemented. This is all part of that assessment and the 90-day assessment that we talked about. So we're not only looking at the TOP gate alone, we're also looking at the impact in other areas, such as the Piney Green gate, Holcomb gate, all along the Highway 24, and again, in conjunction with our partners out in the state and the city, that sequencing and the timing of the traffic lights. All of that is part of the assessment that is going to allow us to inform decision makers in the CG 90 days from now, so that we can either sustain, improve, or adjust the decision that's being made now. But again, we're implementing this 2 weeks, 12 March. We are already working on our assessment in the other areas, and all of that will be combined in a good report 90 days after the implementation of the TOP gate decision on 12 March.
Sir, gentleman at the mic.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I got like 3 questions, if you don't mind. First one is, can we get some PMO presence down at the intersection of, what is this, Seth Williams and Stone Street? That's a high traffic area during after school and before school hours, and I usually walk my daughter there, and there's been some times where it's been kind of sketchy. People kind of running some yellows, and I know we have road guards out there. They're doing a great job, but I think maybe some PMO presence out there just to kind of raise awareness. There's a lot of kids walking through that street. Stone Street especially is very high traffic. The curve is really close to is very narrow, is very close to the road, and when my son's rides a scooter through there, I just freak out every day. So I don't know if we can do anything about that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much for that question. Let me first tell you that Not only do I work at PMO as the provost marshal, but I am also a resident of Camp Lejeune, so I live in this community. I live right on Seth Williams Boulevard myself. My daughter is a student at BITS IS. She's in 5th grade, so I know that route that you're talking about. My son is in middle school at Bristol Boulevard, Bristol Middle School. So I know exactly that's our running route, that's our walk route. So we know exactly what you're referring to. This type of request from the community, I'm always listening to that. There was another resident from that same area that asked me to do additional enforcement in that area, which we have done, both for Stone Street and also for Seth Williams, and we will continue to do that. So when I get back to PMO tomorrow, we'll work with the operations section and we'll figure out a way to ensure that we can provide presence in that area. Right now we have a school resource officer assigned to BITS Intermediate School and also the Johnson Primary. We also have a school resource officer at Brewster Middle School and another one at the high school. All of them are also tasked with that area of Stone Street in the morning for additional patrolling and traffic enforcement. So that is part of our design when we assigned those individuals to the schools. But there's more that we can do, and we appreciate that the community will bring those issues up so that we can address it. Thank you.
Thank you. Second question is, can we look at maybe implementing some speed bumps in some of the communities? I know some people are just like flying down, like, again, had some close calls, and yeah.
Potentially. So you're talking about Stone Street. Stone Street came up previously in a different venue as one of the places where there were speed and safety problems, and so Public Works and Base Safety looked at it, as well as we had some civil engineers with traffic experience look at it, and our first answer is flashing walk sign traffic caution light. For the reasons that you just articulated. So right now we have a project to install 5 of those at crosswalks along Stone Street, and that should be done in April of 2024. For speed bumps, we have to look and study the exact scenario to see if it's appropriate to put in. You don't want to put a speed bump in where it's going to actually cause traffic safety problems. So, but potentially depending on the scenario.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you know, just like in the communities themselves, not specifically on Stone Street, but just like inside the communities. Like I know, you know, in my residence specifically, they implemented a speedometer so they can see whatever speed they're going at. But I mean, they're still. I mean, I can see what speed they're going at, and they're just flying. So specifically, like if
I don't mean to cut you off. I apologize. You're talking about inside base housing, correct?
Yes.
Inside where you're living, inside where your kids are running around and having a good time, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that we were being clear because we're getting a little derailed, and I want to make sure we're clear.
Yeah, specifically inside the housing communities.
So if you can identify specific areas, and we'll be around, the PM and I, after this is complete, we'll take a look at those and get back to you.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks.
And then my final question, more geared towards Sarah, Miss Sarah. After school programs, I know I've been on the waiting list for months now for my daughter. Are we doing anything to open up more after school programs for school-age kids?
So, thank you for your question. Yeah, we are limited to the population that we're currently working with, and we work those waiting lists as much as we can. The challenge is the prioritization lists that come from Headquarters Marine Corps and Department of Defense, and those are, and you know those priorities. So sometimes it's frustrating, I understand, to be moving along a wait list and then kind of going backwards. We keep those programs fairly full, but if you wanted to talk to anyone in particular within our family care program just about kind of what your status is, hopefully we've given you regular updates, and we're happy to continue to make sure that we're communicating well with you.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I mean, I call regularly, like pretty much daily. I'm just trying to see like if, you know, there's more resources going to be allocated towards maybe opening up like in school, after school, instead of like busing them to a different location. Maybe if that's more feasible, more affordable, I don't know.
So I'm going to have to take that for further review. I do know, you know, the two programs that we have are programs that are funded, but I'll certainly, you know, I want to make sure that we can get your name afterwards and make sure that somebody can circle back to you on further discovery.
Yes, ma'am. And then just the final request, I don't know if we can take a look at maybe putting some lights in the softball fields in the high schools. The softball team is doing great this year, but they got to cut the game short because there's no lights.
Oh, yeah. I can, if you can give your information to Corporal Brown, I can get you in touch with Dr. Carver, the high school principal, and Mr. Smith. I know they're always looking at their sports fields and what monies they have available. They would be able to give you the details on that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I want to thank the online audience who's emailing more statements alerting us to some safety issues. They're not necessarily questions, but they particularly mention Lyman Road as a racetrack. Alabama Avenue is another area that they said people are speeding through. We'll make sure these are registered remarks. And also someone commented about trimming down the trees and bushes by Watkins Village entrance because it blocks the visual for kids crossing for those of us in the cars. Okay, so a few safety concerns there. We have another question specific to MCCS. The concern is that they want more communication regarding youth sports programs. They particularly point to Camp Pendleton had a Facebook address for youth sports where a lot of the communication occurred, and they're wondering if the same thing can apply to Camp Lejeune.
Nat, thank you for the question, and thank you for the patron that sent it to us. There are a couple options that we have. We run multiple Facebook pages, and we would ask for the time being, while we're considering this, to use the main MCCS Lejeune Facebook page to communicate that way. We also communicate on youth sports through our website, and if you're not familiar with that, it's usmc-mccs.org, and you can go now through the entire Marine Corps, no matter where you're stationed. That is the standard website, and so you can, there's ease of functionality. Every installation has this same format, so you can easily locate, you know, where youth sports would be and all the information there. We also communicate through our marketing marquees at Lejeune and New River in WAN, I never know how to say that, messaging with Comstrat. And then the main lines of communication that we would also make sure that parents are familiar with is we work very closely to communicate with our coaches and then the coaches to the patrons. There was also a suggestion from the West Coast about looking at a particular website which is called, what was the suggestion, League app. Again, Headquarters Marine Corps is the one that vets any apps or any websites that we could use, and we will go to them to look at that particular option. One hopeful thing on the horizon that we've been excited about getting closer to the finish line, we've been working this for a long time, is an actual MCCS app. We're not allowed to develop those organically. I know that they have a few of them out there at other installations. They don't have an authority to operate, and those will have to be wound down. But we've been working diligently with Headquarters Marine Corps on an MCCS app, and that would solve a lot of those types of issues. So that's what I have in reference to that topic, Nat.
Thank you. Gentlemen, sir, at the mic.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, ladies. Good evening, gentlemen. My name is First Lieutenant Carlos Ortiz. I'm a JAG officer. I'm currently in a legal assistance billet over at Building 66. I've noticed a recent uptick on dog attacks happening on base. For example, one of my clients was walking in the local neighborhood and her tiny dog was nearly mauled to death, and she herself was also bitten. So I'm wondering what is being done to ensure that banned breeds are kept off the base and to ensure families comply with the Marine Corps order on pets. Thank you.
That goes to PMO.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for that question. So PMO has a section that's called the domestic animal control. They are your subject matter experts when it comes to pets aboard the installation. Their job is to ensure that people comply with these rules and regulations. There are specific Marine Corps and base orders that details the requirements and the prohibitions for banned breeds. My team at the domestic animal control section is responsible for making sure that takes place. In addition to that, they provide frequent inspections to ensure people are in compliance, not just the moment they register, but throughout the time that they live here. Now, I will tell you that if there's specific issues or problems that you see in your communities, please call PMO so that we can go out and assess the situation. We have several non-emergency lines, and we can make sure that we send our domestic animal control to your area so that we can address the situation immediately. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Ma'am, please go ahead with your question.
Hello. First I wanted to say thank you. I heard somebody mention about the crosswalks earlier. Actually, the school board brought that up to base earlier this year, so on behalf of my other school board people, thank you for taking care of that, because I see kids almost get run over every day on Stone Street in the morning and afternoon right now. I hope those will get taken care of. My question relates back into housing, specifically. I know Berkeley and Watkins has been an issue. What is, because we were recently told that the order was canceled, which made no sense to me. The order regarding juveniles being out at night. We've got a lot of kids running like the Wild West in the neighborhoods, knocking on windows, scaring people, causing destruction on the homes that are, abandoned currently in the neighborhoods. Do we have a base order on curfew right now? And if so, what is it? And because there's lots of things in the old order that I could find that are relevant for dealing with situations, and we couldn't find a new one. Thank you.
So I'm going to give you a reference. Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune Order 5500.6 Bravo. That is the order that talked about juvenile curfew and restrictions. I did talk to G1 this afternoon because we saw your question yesterday. The order is in fact canceled. So that is something that perhaps we had to relook. But there's no specific order that talks about juvenile curfew for Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune at this moment, since that order has been canceled. Now, I will suggest, again, like I mentioned earlier, we do have several, or we had 3 specific non-emergency lines at PMO. If for some reason you have situations where you feel like you need additional assistance, please call that non-emergency line. If it's not an emergency, we will come and support you.
Yes, sir, I understand that. It's not really for me. It's more for the junior enlisted and wives home alone with small children. I'd go out and yell at somebody at 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't have a problem. But we do have a lot of younger wives and spouses without their significant other at home at times. And in the neighborhoods, it's become an issue. These people are getting scared in the middle of the night, and kids getting woken up from kids being, kids but running amok a little bit. So I appreciate that.
So, ma'am, if I may, yes. I'm not only the MCIE SAR major, but I'm also a client, right?
Yes.
And I'm with you. But, part of the reason why we do orders and regulations and policies is because there's a need. Now, if we're seeing that there's a change in the tide and there becomes a need, right, then, yeah, we need to address that. But the other thing that we need to be able to do is, one, don't wait till you're so fed up that you're losing your mind to call somebody for help. If it's a PMO issue, just make it a PMO issue. And I know a lot of us, and I'll speak from experience just now, We had some issues going on in our housing area. We got PMO involved. They asked some questions. And whether or not anything comes out of it, at least we gave it the attention it deserves, because this is our house. This is our home. And we live on base because we feel safe. And we feel safe enough to have our children run around like little banshees until 2200 at night. And we do that because we love our place. So I would echo Lieutenant Colonel Pinales, if there are specific things, same with the dogs. If part of the reason why we have some of the issues that we do have is that we don't say anything, that we don't make it a priority to make our homes safe, okay? When I used to deploy, I used to be okay because my wife was on base. She was on base with my children, and I was good with that, just like you were, just like a lot of our peers were. And what we do day in and day out, we do because we feel safe, because of the gates that are here protecting the families and our children. And I would ask that just, one, band together as a community. Two, if there's people speeding up and down your roads, right? Say something, report it, do something about it. Don't do anything crazy, but do something about it, and make it your community. But yes, ma'am. If there's a need for a change, we also have quiet hours. People forget about those, though, too, right? So.
I have one other question for my husband who had to go back to work, if that's okay. His question is relative to housing safety as well. I guess we had an issue with somebody with a gun that was being looked for by PMO in our neighborhood a while back, and he wanted to know why there wasn't a mass notification to lock doors and get inside. He said that's a serious safety issue. There were people outside walking dogs and all sorts of stuff, and he wanted to know why the mass notification system was not used this last season when that occurred.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for your question, and that is a very important question. We do have mass notification systems, and we have other means to alert the community. This is something that, as we go through this process, we will make sure that we make it a part of our procedures to ensure that the communication is provided in a timely manner for those that need to have that information.
Ma'am, if I could real quick also, because the Sergeant Major and I are partners in this with PMO as well. So I'm John Giltz, the AMCC Project Director. At first, I just want to tell you that your Resident Advisory Board member brought that up emphatically on Monday. So plug for the Resident Advisory Board members that are out there. We talked about it at length. And a couple things came up, and I can't remember if it was exactly your community or not, but one was kids. And we definitely, the PMO officer that was there, we talked about patterns of life, and still, please call. They will come. And you know what I found, and my oldest son was one of them, kids are kind of dumb. You think they run away, so why call? They just go down the street. And they get caught, and you know what? They tell on everybody. So please call in. And then the second thing was a recent trend, apparently, where we've got some folks coming out through our neighborhoods the night before trash night, picking up a lot of stuff. Makes people uncomfortable. You mentioned, deployed spouse and others. That would freak me out if I was deployed and I got that call from my wife about somebody out back digging through our stuff. So we gave the trash schedule to PMO 2 or 3 days ago and asked them to be vigilant in the day before in the various neighborhoods to come through and ask those folks to move on. It's a private community. Hey, look, I know you're trying to make a living, but this isn't what you're supposed to be doing, and move along. So. Good example of it coming up in the community, to Sergeant Major's point, bringing it to a RAB member, and we want to push that along to resolution. So sorry to interrupt the lady standing there, but I wanted to say that as well.
Hi, I kind of want to add on to her issue with the 5500 6B being canceled. The other part to that is that was also the rule for kids walking to school by themselves. Was included in that. Kids being home by themselves was included in that order. So currently there is no order on the space for the age of kids being left home alone, how long they can be left at home for their ages. So as of right now, we have universal pre-K starting next year potentially, and that means we potentially have 100 pre-K kids who can walk to school by themselves from walk-ins in Berkeley over a mile to JPS on Stone Street. Prior, the 5500 6B stated that it was the age of 10 is when they could walk to school by themselves. So I'm just wondering if there is any reason now to have an order placed.
I will take that on personally. We will make sure that we have an order that is also, with input from our family members and all our tenants and also the individuals that are here on the panel. Make sure to get that input and to update that order. But specifically, I'll let Ms. Fulton talk about.
I just wanted to say, absent an order, the Family Advocacy Program currently uses the North Carolina Fire Code, which restricts children being alone to 8 years old and older. So if you see a child that, is not being supervised or you have a concern about that, you can contact the Family Advocacy Program or PMO and let them know about that.
And then I have one more question that you might actually be able to answer. So as an EFMP family and a child who has special needs and has an IEP, it has come to my attention that when the need for advocacy for IEP meetings comes, the EFMP lawyer, who we are referred to, is not able to help us if our child is in the DODEA school systems. And so I'm kind of wondering who that leaves our EFMP families to go to and be able to get that free legal help for advocating for that.
So I can share this one with Sarah if she has anything to add to it. The EFMP attorney is available for all EFMP families. Her name is Vicki O'Brien, and she is happy to talk to any family that has a concern with an IEP or any other EFMP issue. The only difference is that she is not able to litigate cases against a DODEA school like she could where she is registered, like in the state of North Carolina. She could do that for a public school. But she's still absolutely willing to sit down and talk about what your legal rights are and those types of things. Then our families that have a child with an IEP, those families fall under the mandatory program for EFMP under an educational disability. And so they would rate a case manager through the EFMP program, and that case manager, if requested, is able to go to an IEP meeting or meet with the family ahead of time and talk through the issues, let them know what their legal rights are, and offer them suggestions on, how to transverse that meeting, suggestions for getting the support that they need through the schools.
Thank you.
Okay, we've had a number of questions regarding pharmacy waits. So Captain Brown, I'll let you take the mic and talk about how that's going.
Yeah, so thanks. I think I'll kick it off by kind of giving an update of some recent changes that have impacted us, impacted you all, services for pharmacy, and actually impacting a good deal of the nation, which includes some of our network providers if you try to get pharmaceuticals out in town. So if you're not tracking, about a week ago, last week, there's a third-party vendor that is a large vendor that processes transactions in the pharmacy world. And it's called Change Healthcare is the name of the vendor. It's quite large. It actually processes about a third of all pharmaceutical transactions in the entire country. And it so happens that all DOD pharmacy transactions are processed through this vendor. And last week, this vendor suffered a cyber attack. And what the company did was when they detected the cyber attack, and what they did is they took that network and that service completely offline because the concern was that there may be risk to getting after information held in that repository. The good news is it appears there's not been a breach of any private information. The bad news is they've not fixed that yet, and that service is still offline. What does that mean, and why does it matter to you and to us? All transactions, rather than being automated now for every single pharmacy transaction, has to be done manually. It's the only bypass. And to put some numbers on it, an automated transaction for a refill, single refill, using this third-party vendor takes about 5 minutes. To do that same transaction manually, safely, takes about an hour. So you look at the volume of transactions that we have, and the lag time associated with that, is quite significant. We don't have a whole lot of decision space. Really, what we can do is process everything manually, which is what we're doing, and again, it's a heavy lift, and it's generating some additional wait times, some significant wait times. I'll go over that in a second. Our only other thing that we could do, and some MTFs have done this based on resourcing, is to stop processing refills altogether and to just manage emergency pharmacy fills. And we're stretched pretty thin, but we're not in a place that we think that we should do that, because we don't have a good option for you otherwise, right? Because, as I said, this is a national hit, and a lot of our contracted, TRICARE supported pharmaceutical fills in the network are also impacted by this, number one. And number two, even if you could get prescriptions filled out in town through a retail vendor, the billing transaction is also tied up with this third-party vendor, such that it's possible that you may get stuck with a bill after the fact when all this clears up. So because there's no good option really to us closing down refill prescriptions, what we've elected to do is just continue to push hard and process everything manually, knowing that contributes to some additional wait times. Right now, what we're looking at is about a 6-day lag for refills. So good news is, for things that are emergent you need today, for those must-fill nows, there's a wait, but that'll be processed the same day. For your refills is really where the impact is. So what we've done anticipating that is we looked at our business rules and how early you can activate a refill to turn it on, and we've loosened those up considerably, such that what we would ask is about 6 to 7 days before you would anticipate needing a refill on a prescription. Go in and activate that, and what that will do is account for our anticipated lag times until that vendor comes back online. So again, 6 days, 7 days, to be perfectly safe, probably 7 days. Activate the refill, and we will continue to fill those at this time. So in the last week, if you've anticipated some increased wait times, that's the why behind the what, and what we're doing about that. What I would also ask that you do is Riley and the PAO team are doing a really nice job, I feel, biased of course, but I feel they're doing a really good job of pushing information and updates. So if you track our website and also keep track of us on our social media sites, Riley is keeping an update real time, so you'll know when those services come back online and when you can anticipate us going back to our baseline. And if you don't feel like looking for those, Googling for those things, Riley brought some cards in the back that you can pick up that has our website, and then also links to social media and the app that we have that also has good updates for pharmacy. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you. Lady in the back.
My questions were answered earlier. I just wanted to clarify. I was the one who advocated for the fenced park, so I just wanted to actually just say thank you for how fast the turnover was for getting that done. It was incredible, and it speaks volumes, and like you said, it really means a lot. I have a son with special needs who elopes. I don't know if many of you know what that means, but he has no sense of danger. He can run in the road, he will run in the water. So just having one safe space to take him to means a lot. And so further, the other question I had, I really wasn't directing the inclusive park to AMCC. It was really for the base and MCCS to take that on respectfully. I was kind of wanting an updated inclusive park to be handled by base or by the MCCS. So I guess my question is for them. And then I had another question about the beach mat, because that was my question as well. They do make ones that roll up, so the tide really wouldn't be an issue. Is that something there's like a timeline on? And then is that something maybe the lifeguards could do? Just to like further clarify.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the clarification. So as it pertains to the adaptive playgrounds, so we do have some, as you're aware, at that same park, at the Paradise Point, that probably is, we're open to your suggestions as we would look at adding or changing, and it would just have to be something that we would put into a budget request. But please make sure that you get that information to us, make some recommendations and suggestions about some additional adaptive equipment, and we'll take it from there. And then as it pertains to I've looked at a number of models of these roll-up mats at the beach, and we'll just continue to pursue it and try and figure out the art of the possible. Right now, the issue is the tides and you know, getting them in and out. It's nothing that I could put on lifeguards because, you know, they're taxed with their primary responsibilities. But we're going to continue to try and, you know, figure out a way to, you know, make it better out there. But thank you.
I appreciate that. Also with the inclusive park, there's AMCC touched on it a little bit, but inclusive means actually that it's fenced, and so the one at the Bicentennial Community Center isn't fenced. It also means that the level is even, so there's mulch there and there's turf. I know it's like a simple, it seems like something simple, but it makes a huge difference. So they're really technically, I guess now that we have the fenced park at Paradise Point, it just needs some improvement because it's outdated, and there's like some features that are missing that would make it inclusive. Just like at Hospital Point, we have a playground there. Even though it's not fenced, there is a nice playground, but the one to the right of the other one has been caution taped and broken for a few years, almost 3 years since we've been here. So I was kind of wondering also on that one if there's a plan to fix that or remove it, because it would be a beautiful space for them to like put in a park there in the future. And then that's it.
Thank you for that, and I meant what I said earlier. And so I'd like to get your name as well and talk to you a little bit more, because this is an area that I do feel passionately about, and we have done things. But I'd like to talk to you about some of these other ideas. If we only have one throughout our communities that I call all-inclusive, and you know better than me what it really means to you and your family and lots of other families, then my commitment to you is I'll do what I can. I raised my family here. All our kids grew up here, and this is a wonderful place. But if it's something less wonderful for many of our families, including you, then I'll do what I can to make it something better than it is. To the Hospital Point question and the fenced playgrounds. So I mentioned earlier we have 117 playgrounds across all of AMCC. The problem is somebody got the wild idea to build most of them back in the early 90s. And so when we did a 100% inspection based on new standards, a year or two before I took the job, many of them failed. And so I will not put your families in harm's way, head entrapment and other things. So the ones that are fenced now, there could be damage. We fixed all of those that were fixable and could still be safe, but the rest are going to be demolished. And there's 15 left that need to be demolished. Most are in TT1. As a matter of fact, just for the audience, at one time there were 18 playgrounds in TT1. That's a 900-unit E1 to E5 family area. All 18 were closed for safety reasons. We've opened a couple back up, but I would like to talk to you separately and hear directly from you on your thoughts.
I actually was just meaning like fence to keep them enclosed. Like I know you can have some. No. Okay.
No, I knew what you meant, but there's two different types of fence. The one at Hospital Point that I referred to is most likely going to be demolished because it's not safe and we can't fix it. But the fencing at Bicentennial or somewhere else, I'm serious. I would like to hear from you, and maybe it's not at the Bicentennial one, but somewhere else. We'd like it to be somewhere where many families could enjoy it, but I'll be all ears, and we'll see what we can do, and I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
John, you keep that mic, because I got a question for you. This is a BAH question. Based on previous raises and fluctuations, why does the PPV pocket every cent, and why not just fix a number? When people get raises, why does the BAH get pocketed? So why isn't it consistent? Some Marines are struggling, like single-income households with multiple children who would have to pay for childcare. Is there anything that can be done about that?
Yeah, so thank you. And General Trollinger, I won't walk over there and freak you out anymore. I was actually coming over there because of the camera, and I wanted to talk to folks online, and I don't like to sit. So multiple parts to that question, and first off, I will say anytime your BAH goes up and your rent goes up, look, I get it. A year ago, I went on a road show in multiple communities when we did go full bond in a lot of areas, and I heard the stories, and I understand, and I empathize. There are folks that were paying for college with the amount they were getting back in concessions. There were folks building homes in different places, and there were folks trying to put food on the table. So I do get it. It's a very personal matter what you pay for your home. The second point I would make is that BAH is driven off market out in town, and it's intended to cover your rent at 95% of what your rent would be, and the rest is supposed to be somewhat out of pocket. I don't make the rules. That's just what they are. When these PPVs were put together, there never was a thought that there would be a thing called a concession. And I got asked as recently as this morning as to why we have concessions. It's supposed to be BA equals rent. And the rent and the BA are supposed to kind of match what you would find out in town if it was competitive. So I am under severe pressure to generate as much as I can to roll back into the project. So we raise rent when the market indicates, and yes, we did that quite a bit about a year ago when the rates went up. But what I'd like to tell you is maybe hidden somewhere in that question, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, is not just the real thing for you, which is the difficulties of paying the bills, but I want to give you my commitment and back it up with some facts on what we've done. I can only speak to the nearly 5 years I've been here. And Florence was devastating, but we have rolled in and we are spending at a rate, and if you want, you can come talk to me afterwards. You can come by my office, my phone number and cell number all over the place, and I'll share details with you. But we are spending 200% more across the board at the macro level on you and your homes than we were in 2018. Now, some of that's inflation, just basic inflation. Some of that is utilities. When the utility savings program went away, folks started using a lot more utilities. Our property insurance is about to go up another 25%. In 2018, it was $3.5 million. It's about to be $8.8 million per year. I don't pay that. You pay that. You trust me with your BAH to put it back into your homes and pay the bills. And that's what we do. And we spend what you bring in. And I am accountable personally and directly to the CG. I have spoken to the Commandant about this. Multiple general officers at Camp Lejeune, families, one-on-one, in groups. And I'm willing to talk to any individual or any group, a spouses group, a neighborhood, whatever it is, and explain to you why your rent went up, what it was based on as best I know, and what I am doing with what you've trusted me with. And I'll end where I started. I know it's very personal. I know in some cases it was a dramatic increase. And I do understand and I do empathize. I just ask you to trust that when that comes in, I am plowing it back into your community. Literally plowing it back into your community. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Gentlemen, sir.
Good evening, all. My name is Michael Feeks. I'm a second lieutenant at Headquarters Battalion, 2nd Marine Division. My question pertains to walking distances getting to work. Obviously, I'm at Headquarters Battalion, where you have Marines working at different working stations, at several different locations across a wide area. But for most of my Marines in H1, they're having to walk a mile, half a mile to a quarter mile per day just to get to work and back. Obviously, the Marines can eat that for breakfast, but, God forbid it rains, they get put on a restriction. And if I'm a 20-year-old Marine and I'm about to get out, that's just one more reason why I may want to get out of the Marine Corps. Obviously, I don't know what the way forward is to address this, but I'm just curious if this is something that's been talked about in the past, something that's been acknowledged by you all.
I just want to clarify the question. It's from the distance that your Marines have to walk from their barracks to H1?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I don't think we have taken a look at that. I know that there are plans to move the division headquarters from H1 into where CLR 27 headquarters is currently at. I don't know if that's going to decrease or increase the traffic from the barracks to their headquarters, but we do have plans for a MEF headquarters, division headquarters, and also an MLG headquarters, and those are fully funded, and we're just waiting on some sequence, and you can see that the MEF headquarters is already done. Bob, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, sir. I would just add that broadly speaking, we do master planning for the base, and a component of that always is the walkability. But you can imagine how challenging it is to ensure that everyone, that every building is walkable. But that's a component of the planning that goes into where facilities are sited and where barracks are. It's just a challenging process. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. How are you? Guys hanging out all right up there?
I'm good.
All right. I'm the active member, as John Giltz would put it. I've exchanged some emails with him. I see he brought the AMCC entourage out here. I have some questions for the panel here, along with himself. My actual name is Thomas Mooney. I'm a staff sergeant. The question I have to present, there's probably a lot in there, but one of them is, as far as the housing construction and maintenance goes, who is the oversight for that? On building codes, that might be an MHO question. We've dealt with them quite extensively, and the follow-up question for that afterwards would be, what is the MHO and what do they do? What are they actually advocating?
Well, to answer your question for the MHO, the MHO has 4 different branches, but as far as for the advocacy, what we do is for residents that reside on base, we have a 3-step process. Once you've gone to your we have 2 PV partners at Camp Lejeune, and AMCC and Liberty Military Housing. So once you've gone to your community manager for your respective neighborhood and you're not satisfied with the issue, then you go to the step 2 process, which is the PPV management for assistance. Then again, if you're still not satisfied, you contact the MHO. We have an advocacy team there. There's a 13 employee plus up that we did in accordance with National Authorization Act, and they're there to work in conjunction with the resident, AMCC. We take their team, their environmental team, their maintenance team, whatever the issue may be, neighbor complaints, pet complaints, whatever it is. And when it's maintenance, we do combined inspections, and we advocate for both the resident and the partner, and we're there to help mediate any situation and to assure that the complete maintenance is getting resolved and the issue is getting resolved to the satisfaction of both parties. That's what we do as an advocate. We take each situation under advisement. We do inspections, and like I said, the main thing that we do is we work in conjunction with the partners and try to come up to the best resolution for the resident.
On the inspections pieces, who performs those inspections? Is it inspectors, certified inspectors?
The inspectors, we do have inspectors at the base. Some of them are going through certification processes now. It's been a funding issue getting them certified, but we're actually hosting 2 certification classes coming up in April and May to get them certified. But the inspectors have training, they have on-the-job training, and I can't speak for the partners with their certifications, but I know that they do have a wonderful environmental specialist there, safety team, and maintenance team. And we try to all do the combined, depending on what the issue is in the home, we try to get the correct people out there to do that inspection. And we do it combined so that we're all seeing the same thing at the same time to try to get to a resolution.
When you refer to the partners, who would that be?
AMCC or Liberty, whichever housing partner that you reside with.
Okay. So the company that is performing the work has the same company performing the inspection?
Yes, unless they've subcontracted it out, yes.
Very well. And the other question I have for the housing is, what is the current wait list on the housing?
There are 11 different housing areas, so it depends on which housing area you're speaking about. Some, you know, I actually have the list with me if for specific housing areas. I'd be glad to give you a copy if you'd like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Turning our attention back to the TOP gate, we've had some questions that have come online. There's been some concern about emergency vehicles. If that gate is closed, how will you accommodate emergency vehicles coming on and off via the TOP gate?
Yes, thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, part of the work that we're doing prior to implementation is to collaborate with our on-base counterparts and also off-base counterparts. And through that work, we are going to assess and ensure that we have a plan to facilitate emergency vehicle access when necessary. I can tell you that in working with the fire department, EMS on base, they already have a plan for that, and we're going to incorporate that into our processes and procedures. By the time we get to the implementation, all of that will be in place.
Our Fire and Emergency Services Department participated in the planning team, and they were fully involved, and we received their input. And that is one of the goals, is to allow them to be able, because we have mutual aid agreements with our partners in the county and also in the city, and so when there is a mutual aid agreement or they're going to provide mutual aid, we will open the gate for them throughout, and we'll continue to assess that.
Okay, we're nearing the 7:30. I want to make sure that anyone else here in the theater gets their question in. Does anyone else have questions? Because we have plenty of them online. One question again, another. Yes. Oh, I apologize. Go ahead.
I snuck up here. Yep. Good evening, Barbie Abernathy. I had a couple things. One for the hospital. Even before the cyber attack, wait time 3 to 4 hours was about average, whether it's a refill or a new prescription. Is there any way, and I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, for more staff or better procedures as far as that? And also anything to flag the system when somebody's trying to get some meds, because my husband was sitting there for over 6 hours one day, and then he found out that, like, the meds weren't carried. So is there any resolution with that?
Yeah, so thanks. So the first question, staffing, full disclosure, in the last 3 years, we're down about 20% staffing in the pharmacy. Some of that, there are lots of reasons, I think, to that. Some of that, I think, is recoverable, and we're working on. Relative to last year, we've seen an increase in our staffing. It's modest, but an increase. We're looking at the staffing in the actually in multiple areas, to include the pharmacy. Our performance, as you probably know, we have active duty staff, we have civilian personnel, and we have some contracts. Not surprising, the performance of each of those is not the same. So we've been working hard on changing the construct for those things that perform more, perhaps investing more in those things and divesting from some of those vehicles that have not performed as well. And that work is ongoing. We're somewhat constrained because we have statutory caps on all of those things, and it's really challenged to influence that. One of the more promising things that we've been looking at is for our active duty fills. We are, like any other CONUS location, we are the lowest priority for active duty fills. So, first priority go to operational platforms, and by the way, in the last 5 years, there have been a lot more of those platforms. Second priority goes to overseas locations, and then third priority is CONUS locations. We made a pretty compelling argument, I think, up echelon, that all CONUS locations are not the same, and there are marketplaces, as we reside in and work in, that are at a disadvantage relative to other places where there are more resources that can be leveraged on the outside, either in the network and or marketplaces that have more assets to hire, either via contract or civilian personnel. And we have a draft up that would maybe allow us to look at the prioritization of our active duty fills such that CONUS locations aren't look the same, and we would be favorably impressed by that. We would essentially potentially receive more active duty personnel, and I think that is, I don't want to use the term likely, but I think that has promise and as it goes forward, which will help relieve some of the strain there. Another thing that we're restricted by in policy is for hires on the civilian personnel side. There is law in place that they're required to have 1 or 2, depending upon what we're hiring, 1 or 2 years of experience before we can hire them on board. And that we've taken that up echelon. Actually, the director for DHA is advocating for us to do away with that, because we do a lot of training. We have a lot of training affiliation agreements with local services, community college, et cetera, a lot of universities, wherein we have people who come and do a year or so of training with us to complete their training, who already live in the area, who are interested in staying in the area. We know a lot about them because they've been working with us for a year or so, and we would love to hire them, and we can't right now. And what happens is they go elsewhere to get a job, to get a year of experience, and many times don't come back. So we're working a lot of angles there to try to increase the labor force that's available to provide pharmaceutical services. And again, I have a lot of promise that those are going to pay off for us. The other thing, if you're not tracking, and we try to pitch this wherever we go, Q Anywhere. If you're not tracking Q Anywhere, I would encourage you, and we can stand by tonight and give you some feedback on how to do that. Unfortunately, Q Anywhere is impacted by the cyber attack right now, so that service is down. But that will come back online, and for those patients who are using Q Anywhere, essentially what it is you can wait for your pharmaceutical to be filled someplace else rather than sitting in our pharmacy. And then when it's filled, you're notified, and you can come in, and it's pretty short turn and wait actually physically in the building to get your prescription. So if you're not tracking that service, we brought that online about 1.5 years ago or so, and it's actually been really well received by both our staff and our patients. Did I hit both your questions? I talked a lot. I'm not sure if I got them both.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
The next big thing that I'm concerned about, obviously the TOP gate. Obviously from the online stuff, it affects many people. Beach season is coming up. Weekends, people do the commissary. I know myself, I go for runs with groups and stuff on the weekends here on base. I just want you all to consider all that stuff. My husband works Stone Bay. I work New River and Cherry Point, so Hubert is definitely our midway for everything. So I need you guys to please consider all that stuff, along with everybody else that said everything online and here tonight. One good suggestion is having it closed at night, even though I don't want to see it closed at night. But yeah, that's something to consider. And I definitely agree about the upgrade. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Thank you.
Nat, how are we doing on time?
We are at 19:30 right now, but I want to give this lady a chance.
I just want to follow up with a question I asked earlier. Just two parts. First, what if a caseworker, EFMP caseworker, is not knowledgeable in the IEP advocate and they don't feel comfortable doing that? Then where do we go? Because that is occurring. And secondly, you stated the EFMP lawyer is not able to litigate. So that has left our base families who are dealing with DODEA unable, having to pay for the litigations that they have. Do you have any answers or solutions for that, or who they can go to about that kind of stuff?
I don't have an answer for you as far as the litigation piece. That's a federal law that you can't litigate against the federal government in certain circumstances. I would suggest if you have any issues with an EFMP case manager, that you contact the program manager, which is Stacy Huntington, and we can get you her contact information. And for you or any parent who has an issue with a caseworker, you know, some of them are newer. They may not have had, you know, as extensive training in the IEP process and the FAPE and IDEA rules. So, you know, they may need some support, and Stacy would be able to communicate with you about that.
Thank you.
Okay, that pretty much wraps it up. I really thought this was going to be painful pulling questions out, and I'm sorry to say, or I'm happy to say that I'm wrong. We have a lot of questions that went unanswered online, but just note that those questions are also important. We are registering them. There have been plenty of comments about potholes, about speeding in certain sections, so we'll ensure that those are all registered with the appropriate personnel. We also have a resources table. If you weren't able to get your answers, please look at those resources, do your research, but at the same time, we have Corporal Brown over here who's raising his hand. If you didn't get a question, we're going to get that question answered, okay? And again, thank you to those who are online who've been submitting questions as well. General, I'll let you have the last word.
Last word is thank you very much for coming. Thank you for everybody that's online. There's some tough choices that we have to make, and then we have to make tough choices with limited resources. That's not to make excuses, but this feedback is welcomed. This feedback is important to us so we can get better and we can make improvements. And like Nat said, is if we hadn't answered your question just yet, make sure you get that to the individual over here, the corporal over here, but then also online, we'll make sure we record those and get online, and then we'll provide feedback to you. There are other resources on ways to provide feedback, and they're on the table over there. And I'd also like to thank the Camp Lejeune leadership over here and their family members for attending and also listening to what we're providing to you all. Thank you very much for coming again, and have a safe trip home.
Also, if you